Hello and welcome to Newsmakers. I'm Louie, Butko, and thank you for joining us however you found us on CHCH Podcast. On today's show, I'm pleased to be joined by Danko, a former radiation therapist at the Juravinski Cancer Center and professor in the same field. Danko was the former chair of the Hamilton Wentworth District School Board and current Ward 7 trustee, which she served for the past decade. And she will be nominated as the Ontario Liberal candidate for the Hamilton Mountain riding in the next provincial election. Danko, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Louie.
This is actually the first. This is the first husband-wife combo. I can now say I've had the Dankos on the show. JP has been on the show before. It's great to have you in here. Let's start with your decision to run for the Ontario Liberals. Obviously, there's some work to be done in the party. A new poll says they're still 16 points back of Doug Ford. Take us into the decision-making to run. You've made that decision before, but to run for provincial politics. How did you come about it?
It took a long time to decide to run for provincial politics. As you know, and as you've mentioned, I've been actively involved in municipal politics through the school board, and my husband is a city councillor. So, you know, we talk politics a lot at the dinner table, but not usually party politics. And it's not something, I purposefully wasn't involved in a party as a school board trustee because I felt it was really important to be impartial, to be neutral or seen as neutral when I had to draw attention to things that needed to be criticized, of course. However, we've seen what 6.5 years of the Doug Ford government has done. And when I think about, can I point to one thing that has been done well in the last 6.5 years, one thing that the Ford government has done that they didn't have to do because we had a groundswell of complaints and support from the community to change the direction, I can't point to anything. And I would say that the big deciding factor for me was a drive through my community. I was driving through downtown Hamilton up to the mountain. I live sort of in the Upper James area. And I saw tents in parks, and a lot of tents in parks. And, of course, all of the people's belongings. And I thought, how did we get here? This isn't the Hamilton that I know. I've lived here for 22 years. And then I got to Upper James. And driving down Upper James, I saw cannabis stores, vaping stores. I saw, ads for alcohol in corner stores. And I thought, this isn't the Hamilton I know. And when I think about how we got here, a lot of the problem is the Doug Ford government. And if I want to see change, if I want to see the right investment in healthcare and education, if I want to see responsible decision-making that leads to thriving communities, I need to be part of that change. So I looked into the parties. I have been approached by all of the parties over the years. They often look for someone with name recognition. In looking at the parties, I also considered the NDP. I've voted based on issues in the past. I've never been affixed to a party. But when I look at the NDP, again, how can I support a party or be part of a party that would have a candidate that is anti-police when we are seeing crime escalated in our community? That is such a major concern right now. How can I support a party that I haven't seen them hold Doug Ford accountable over the past term? That wasn't a choice for me. It wasn't a fit. And then I found Bonnie Crombie and the Ontario Liberal Party, which is rebuilding. And it's so important to distinguish it from the federal Liberals.
We were going to get there, because absolutely. I mean, the Liberal brand right now, because of what's happening with Prime Minister Trudeau and his decision-making and just kind of the groundswell of the lack of support he has right now, the Liberal brand right now is toxic a little bit. How can you differentiate provincial Liberals? That's going to be the big challenge for this election, no?
It absolutely is. And it's actually been quite surprising to me. Again, I've not been in party politics. I follow it, of course, because I see the impacts. But it's surprising to me the number of people who do not understand that they are two separate entities. They are two completely different parties. And I would remind people that every province has a provincial party, and they may have provincial Liberals, provincial Conservatives, and those are unique and separate from the federal government. If I could get that message out, it's really important. We are completely separate. I would say that, unfortunate what's happening in the federal level. At the federal level, we always want governments to be making good decisions and taking actions that support Canadians, that support Ontarians, and in my case, that support Hamiltonians. But I think we can get past this branding, this negative brand issue, if I can. One, by distinguishing us from the federal Liberals. The Ontario Liberal Party is a different party. But also standing on the policy that's coming out, because there's some really, really good, important policy that can actually make a difference for families, for youth that are growing into adulthood like my children are, who want to be able to buy a house and really don't see that as attainable. We're seeing some plans that would actually make a difference.
To that point, Bonnie Crombie has been leader now for just over a year of the getting close to just the year mark. What do you see in her that gives you confidence that, A, I want to run under her banner, I want her to be the leader, I want her to be the next Premier of Ontario?
I would say it's pragmatism. She's been the mayor of Mississauga for a number of terms. She understands how provincial decisions, policy, and funding impact people's day-to-day lives. And I think sometimes people separate out the party politics from the impacts on them, but they are real. So she understands that. And I would say that she's come across as someone who's very real. She's just like you and me. She's not a talking head politician. She's really looking to connect with people, but she's also really looking for solutions. And so far, some of the core things that she said that really resonated with me and helped me see this party as the party that people can all get on board with. I think we can move people if they can understand, the party's values. She's talked about the importance of funding police. She's talked about, that there are issues with affordability that maybe the federal government wasn't sensitive to with the carbon tax, but let's remember that it's the Doug Ford government that doesn't have a climate action plan, and that's why that carbon tax is imposed on Ontario. It's not actually the federal government.
Trade, wasn't there?
Exactly.
Sort of
there was that they canceled. So if we will have a robust climate plan. She's someone who has said, we know people cannot afford housing. And so what can we do to remove development charges that are those initial charges before you ever put a shovel in the ground that people have to come up with that increase the cost of housing? They delay housing starts. Let's go back to pre-Mike Harris times when we didn't have those and the province funded that infrastructure. That would be a meaningful change that would improve the number of housing starts, the housing access, but also affordability. And so when you look at that pragmatic, practical, responsible viewpoint, I don't know how you don't get behind that.
So to that point, we talked about the 6.5 years Doug Ford has been premier of this province. We mentioned the polling numbers, the most recent ones. 42% of the province say they would still vote for Doug Ford. That's what you get when you have kind of this three-party system that we're living in. Why do you think that Doug Ford isn't more unpopular?
It is fascinating what does not stick to this government. We've seen scandal after scandal after scandal. We've seen, issues that have just been magnified over the past 6.5 years. People are frustrated with the issues with funding for education, for healthcare. And somehow we'll pick the devil we know and not the devil we don't, right? To use a phrase. So it's remarkable, but I think it's because the Liberal Party has a new leader. It's only been a year. They're building their brand. They're trying to get the message out. And this is at a time when we see community news disappearing, right? We lost our local radio station. We lost our community mountain news. So how do you get this message out to people when access to the news is actually quite challenging, which is why I appreciate the chance to be on here.
You're welcome.
And so, there's a reason they're looking to call a snap election in the winter and not wait until 2026 when they should have an election as a majority party.
Because that's the thing. I mean, here we are talking, you will be the candidate, but we don't know when the election is going to be called. It shouldn't have to. Like you're saying, you'd love to continue to serve, put all your attention into Ward 7 trustee. But you have to be doing this. You have to be getting ready because there could be an election called in the next few months. Even something like that. Are you surprised that something like that we're going to have an election at a cost of however many millions of dollars for no other reason than for Doug Ford to re-solidify his majority? Like, shouldn't that be a red flag in itself for people?
Well, and it has been in the past. Again, I think it's how do we reach people that are receiving information on their cell phones? They're not engaging in even cable news, right? Like you have to seek out the news if you don't have cable, which most people don't. They're not getting the newspaper, the spec, whatever it is. And on social media, on your phone, you can't even access most news reports. CHCH is one of the exceptions. So if we can't get the message out to people, you know what, they're busy with their own lives. They're struggling to make ends meet, right? They have their own issues that they're just not paying attention. But in the past, when a majority government has called an early election, that has hurt their reputation. That has hurt them in the polls, as it should this time around.
You obviously served as chair of the Hamilton Wentworth District School Board. You still serve as trustee. How does that experience help you? Where is that experience going to help you, and what do you think you'll be able to take from that into this campaign, I guess, whenever it kicks off?
Serving as chair during a pandemic, which is one of the most difficult times to be chair, I think that's really helped me realize that, one, I do have a skill set. I do have something to offer the community. Because during the pandemic, I was a leader. I was someone who was trying to get information to people in a meaningful way, help them understand the many different changes that happened, often last minute, and to try to settle people's stress levels down as we worked through a very challenging time. I also had to do that in conjunction with the board, with staff, with the provincial government providing direction. And I think that sets me up to be an effective part of a party, and to be an influential member of a party, someone who can be a strong voice and actually bring Hamilton's concerns to the party level and get results.
Hamilton is such a mishmash of politics, and you mentioned it. JP, you being a trustee, your husband being a city councillor. I had somebody tell me, I don't get JP's politics. Like, I don't know what party he is, and it's like, I think that's the point with him, right? And especially in city council, you deciding to pick a party, picking a party that is not an official status at Queen's Park. Their leader doesn't have a seat. This is going to be a lot of work. You up for it?
I have never shied away from a lot of work. I got into politics as the Ward 7 trustee. That was not a comfortable thing to do. Campaigning, that was like a horrible, not a horrible experience. People were lovely at the door. But for someone who hadn't done it before, that is a really scary thing to do. And then also, as trustee, but more as chair of the board, when you put yourself out there, particularly as a female politician, you're going to get feedback. Some of it will be positive, but you will be attacked. You will be attacked as a person. Your values will be attacked. It's quite awful what people will post and will share. And, they can be so misinformed and so ignorant. That's something that I've had to learn to deal with, right? But also, I've worked full-time, been a trustee, raised my family. I volunteered during that time. I was very actively involved in my school community, my community association. I guess I like to be busy, but I'm not afraid of hard work, and I think it's important work that needs to be done.
Do you and John Paul set boundaries when it comes to politics talk at the dinner table? Do kids just roll their eyes every time? Is there like a code word that they can just get up and leave if you start saying something? Like, because I'm sure you have lively discussions, and JP's an opinionated guy. I'm sure you're an opinionated woman. How do you guys handle that sort of situation? Both being in politics, I'm sure there's some benefits to both going through, like you said, the campaigns, the having somebody to lean on, but. What are the benefits? What are the challenges of two politicians under one roof?
It's been interesting. And if anything, sometimes when you're a married couple, and it's been 22 years in our case, you run out of things to talk about. And so we always have something to talk about. And so actually we enjoy having the political discussions. I think the boundaries, and sometimes I have to remind someone of the boundaries, is I will not go after your people. You do not get to go after mine. Right? So you may have a problem with the education system or with our board, but you need to go through the right channels. You don't get to post on Twitter about that. I may have had to remind them of that. And there are times that we don't agree on an issue, but I think that that's a good thing because we will have debate. It is important that, we're doing that respectfully. And of course we are. But sometimes having that discussion helps me see, well, why are you over here? And I can also say, well, how about we think about this from this lens? And I actually think that helps us both be better politicians and better decision makers for Hamilton.
Ward 7 Trustee, what's going on at the Hamilton Wentworth District School Board? Anything? Obviously, Christmas, a busy time. We were talking before we hit record here. Your Christmas plans are coming together, but how are things when it comes to the board right now?
They've been going well. I have been absent. Well, I've been present at meetings, but only slightly because I had a concussion.
Oh, okay.
So it impacted my participation a little bit over the past, month and a half. But I would say that, we're really making headway. We have new strategic directions that we set a year and a bit ago, and they're really taking on a new life, right? We have this annual plan. The director just gave us a summary of it, and we're making gains in student achievement. We're making gains in how students are feeling at school in terms of feeling included, their well-being. It is a slow road to make those improvements, but we're finally tracking to see improvements, and that is so exciting.
Speaking of improvements, I believe there was a report this week about some $12 billion in renovations that the government is behind when it comes to Ontario schools. I'm sure there's a couple of Hamilton Wentworth District School Board schools that would very much like some renovations, especially when it comes to these hot summer days we seem to be getting. You ready? You ready for this campaign? Whenever it's called? What do you need to do? You did your first major interview, I want to call it. You got that out of the way, Dawn, so you're welcome. But you ready for this campaign?
We are getting ready, right? The fact is, this has happened fast and furious. It is a busy time of year, and I am mindful of my duties as a Mohawk employee, as a Ward 7 trustee, and I'm making sure that I'm following up on those things. At the same time, getting organized for a campaign is really a lot of work. So I think, we've got a couple of weeks to really get our feet under us, but I'll be out talking to people as soon as possible. I want to respect that there is a holiday coming up, but people can expect to see me at their door because I need to get out and talk to the community. I need to set the record straight. I need to differentiate the federal and the provincial Liberals. I need to, talk to people about what are their issues and help them understand how this Liberal Party, Bonnie Crombie's Liberals, we are looking to make a difference.
Well, it'll be a tall task for Bonnie Crombie and the Liberals to form the next government of Ontario, but it seems like you're up for the challenge. Dawn, thanks so much for making the time on this very, very busy time of year. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. My thanks to Dawn Danko for joining me today, and my thanks to you as well, because we could not do the show without your support. And hey, while you're here, make sure you like and subscribe to CHCH Podcast to never miss an episode of this show or any of the other great shows we have for you, including my sit-down with George Strombolopoulos, who is the host of our CHCH, The Countdown to 2025, wherever you found this show. You can find that show right here, or you can go to chch.com/podcast. I want to thank Mike Corsten for directing today's episode, and one more time, thank you for tuning in. From all of us here at CHCH, I'm Louie Butko. Have a great day.